We are only here because of the outcry from the public, outraged by a government and public institutions that continue to shy away from questions on ethnicity, immigration status and religion. The Honourable Member for Great Yarmouth has got on with the job and has put the government to shame with his independent rape inquiry. Honestly, it was horrifying what we were told. Horrendous stories of rape.
Stay with me, because the full video I'm about to show you puts everything into a new perspective. Right then, let me tell you something about the British government and accountability that will make your blood boil, and not in the way they'd like it to. Imagine you are a survivor. You have lived through something so horrific that most people couldn't bear to hear the details, let alone experience them. You finally get the promise of an official inquiry, a proper investigation. Someone is going to look into how this was allowed to happen, who knew what, and why the institutions that were supposed to protect you did absolutely nothing. You exhale for the first time in years, and then you find out who they've appointed to lead it. A Labour peer chairing a Labour government inquiry into failures that happened on Labour's watch. You genuinely could not make this up. Welcome, everybody, to the United Kingdom of Accountability, where accountability means investigating yourself, apparently. Real quick, before we roll the footage, if you're enjoying this content, do me a huge favour. Hit that like button and smash subscribe. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. Don't be one of them. It's free for you and it helps us out more than you know. Already clicked? You're awesome. Let's get into the video.
Esther McVeigh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's a real pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today, Dame Siobhan. And I welcome today's debate, but it is deeply disappointing that such a debate is needed. And we are only here because of the outcry from the public, outraged by a government and public institutions that continue to shy away from questions on ethnicity, immigration status and religion. We have also seen how the government's official inquiry into grooming gangs has not only moved at a glacial pace, but has also appointed one of their own, a Labour peer, to chair it, and involved a former council chief executive and a chair of the NHS Foundation Trust as panel members. Exactly what the survivors expressly said they did not want to happen, handing the inquiry over to people from the very institutions under investigation. Meanwhile, the Honourable Member for Great Yarmouth has got on with the job and has put the government to shame with his independent rape inquiry, which heard 10 days of evidence in February and will report the finding next week. I don't know if the word is fortunate enough to be a part of that panel, but when asked, I accepted it. And quite honestly, it was horrifying what we were told. Horrendous stories of rape. And it wasn't just rape, although that's bad enough. It was torture. Women battered, strangled, cut, whipped until they were close to death, and then brought back round to be raped again. Over a sustained period of time, because nobody wanted to believe what they said when they reached out to the institutions that should have been looking after them. Some reaching out to the children's homes they were in, paid thousands of pounds a week and a year to look after them, and they were let down. Why? Because they were white, working-class girls, many vulnerable that people did not want to listen to and call them literally white trash. And they allowed others, elders they saw in a community, to be above reproach, and therefore they did not investigate at all. This is not a political football, a right-wing bandwagon, or a dog whistle issue. This is about life-altering suffering and abuse of the most shocking kind. Suffering and abuse that could have been prevented, and the survivors deserve to know the truth about the failings that was allowed to happen. I would hope that all of us here today can agree that the only thing that really matters is protecting children, and that we must do everything to put them first.
This is what Esther McVey put on the table in Parliament, and it landed like a grenade in a very quiet room. Because the question she was really asking isn't complicated. It doesn't require a law degree or a political science background to understand. It is simply this: how on earth can survivors trust an inquiry when the people running it are drawn from the very institutions under investigation? That is not a conspiracy theory. That is a straightforward question about basic fairness, and the fact that it needed to be asked at all tells you everything you need to know about how this government has handled the whole affair. And let's talk about pace, because this is where it gets particularly embarrassing for the government. McVey pointed out that the official inquiry has moved, in her words, at a glacial pace. Glacial, as in the Ice Age called, and it wants its speed back. Meanwhile, the member for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe, a name that keeps appearing in these chambers whenever someone actually wants to get something done, went ahead and commissioned his own independent inquiry. His panel heard 10 days of evidence back in February. 10 days, and they are already preparing to publish their findings. An independent MP working outside the government machinery has managed to do in weeks what the official process has failed to do in months. That contrast is not subtle. It is not a minor administrative footnote. It is a full-on indictment of a government that promised action and delivered process. Now here is the part that genuinely stops you in your tracks. McVey described in that chamber what the panel heard from survivors, and she didn't dress it up or soften the edges to make it more palatable for a parliamentary audience. She said it was horrifying. She said it was horrendous. These were women who were simply let down by a bureaucratic failure or a missed referral form. These were women who were tortured, battered, subjected to sustained and prolonged abuse of the most extreme kind imaginable. And throughout all of it, when they reached out to children's homes, to institutions that were being paid significant sums of public money specifically to look after them, they were not believed. They were dismissed. They were failed at every single turn by the very people whose entire purpose was to protect them. That is not a political football. McVey said it herself, and she's right. This is not about which party scores points off which. It is about children, vulnerable children who deserved protection and received abandonment instead. It is about institutions that had every resource available to them and chose repeatedly to look the other way. And it is about an inquiry that survivors themselves said they did not want handed to establishment figures from the institutions they were meant to be scrutinizing. The survivors said that clearly and publicly. The government did it anyway. So here we are, an official inquiry that crawls, an independent inquiry that runs rings around it, a parliament where a backbench MP has to stand up and say what should have been said from the dispatch box months ago, and a government that is yet to offer a satisfying answer to any of it. British politics, as ever, finds a way to make the straightforward complicated and the urgent bureaucratic. These survivors deserve the truth. They deserve a process they can trust, and they deserve a government that treats their suffering as a national emergency rather than a scheduling inconvenience. If this made you angry, good, it should. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think needs to happen next, because this conversation is far from over.